Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Sleeping Gods Distant Skies, a 1 to 4 player narrative adventure game. And disclaimer that I got a review copy of this one. I enjoyed the original Sleeping Gods quite a lot, but had some quibbles about the design. Let's discuss how this one improves and changes some of those and get to the points. So for my number 5 point, I'm looking at the attrition in the game, the timers, how you are worn down and recover back up. So some of the main tension points being pushed on you in the game are that your characters are losing health and getting closer to being knocked out. You're spending your stamina to activate abilities and compete in tests. And you're running out of your bonus adventure cards as you spend them for effects. But I really like how they handle recovering those things in Distant Skies. You've got a certain number of camps you can do based on whether you're playing a regular or long-term campaign. And each of them is going to heal your characters, get all your stamina back, get all your adventure cards back. Basically just give you a reset and give you all your tools again. It kind of gives you the choice of how risky you want to be, how far you want to push your resources when you're running low on things. And I really like that choice, while also giving you the flexibility to quickly heal. In the original Sleeping Gods, the main timer was the event deck. You went through it a certain number of times. So the game was kind of always around the same length. I didn't find that as compelling. And additionally, one of the main ways to heal and get rid of fatigue was to go to ports, but you had to have money to stay at the inn to do that. So I had games where I ran out of funds and couldn't really heal consistently. So making it a thing you can always do now with the camping is certainly an improvement in my mind. My number 4 point is focused on the management of the characters and items in the game, especially when you start getting upgrades. And I would call this a mix. So you have 5 characters overall, and they each have their own health, each have their own stamina, like I mentioned. And they can each gain up to 8 ability upgrades, which is more than I think maybe they should be able to, although it does make you feel super duper powerful when your stats and your abilities are so strong. But on the negative side, it can be a lot to manage in the later campaign. I would frequently find myself forgetting about abilities I had earned. Similarly, the adventure cards you earn as you go are super awesome, giving you lots of cool abilities to heal or mitigate combat or lots of other things. But you can get so many, and especially after you rest, when you get them all back, it can just be a chore to kind of dig through and figure out what you can do. So again, this is a mix, but it is, for my money, a lot better than the original game, because 5 characters are better than the 9 you used to have to deal with. They take up a lot less table space. Yes, up to 8 upgrades per character is quite a lot, but in the old one, you can only have up to 2, and then they would go away whenever you went through the event deck. So it was really frustrating, and you kind of felt like your characters weren't upgrading or were like devolving for some reason. So I certainly like the more permanent upgrades here. And then, as annoying as the adventure cards can be dealing with all of them, in the old one you had to put tokens on them, so they had to often be sitting on the board. At least now they can just be in your hand or in the discard pile. And then also, because you had to use command tokens to use adventure cards in the old version, I found very quickly that I would use all of them on my best items and then just clear them off consistently, instead of using my full adventure card pile. So I certainly prefer this version where everything is useful and you're going to use almost everything each time before you rest. Although the one potential negative I want to add in the late game for the new version is that with these adventure cards you can use all of, with these crazy number of skill upgrades, you can become crazy overpowered, and it can get a little trivial for most of the challenges you might face. That's fun for me. I like power fantasies, but other people might wish for the tougher endgame that Sleeping Gods offered sometimes. My number 3 point is focused on traversal in the game as you do your open world exploration thing, and this is a pro for my taste. They make exploration very smooth in this version for a single one of your 5 actions, your 5 time a turn. You can move orthogonally to another space, and then for 2 time you can explore there and see what there is to see, have your little adventure. And there is a lot to see in the 9 areas they have in the game. You'll probably get to maybe half of the map in your first playthrough, maybe a bit more, and then you'll still have a lot more for at least a second playthrough, if not 3 or 4. But then an awesomely fun addition is the airplane travel. This is basically like fast traveling, which a game like this, where you're sometimes going back to other places and going back to resolve quests you've earned, it is great to have this option, both thematically and mechanically, to kind of move around quickly. And yes, you have to manage your plane's fuel and keep it repaired, but they make it fairly easy to fix those things if you really need to, so it's an awesomely smooth integration that I really enjoy. And no question, this is for me a huge upgrade over the original Sleeping Gods. In that one, you had to do a skill check every time you wanted to move the boat, which got pretty annoying pretty quickly. You also had no fast travel options, so when you realized you had gone the wrong direction for a quest, or you had to go back really far to do something, it was horrific, at least for me, just the feeling of, oh my god, the grind of backtracking. And just on a simple level, I like that they've cut out all of like the ship stations that you would go to and getting the command tokens and using them for everything. This is a cleaner, simpler system. Get me to the combat, get me to the exploration, that's what I care about. Speaking of combat, this is pretty much the same system as Sleeping Gods, and for me it's a pro. You'll have a line of enemies, and you're trying to place damage on their spaces here, and you're building out orthogonally, even to the point where you can do splash damage and jump over to another character as long as they're next to the person you're fighting. And you attack with these combat cards, which you assign to your different characters, and they're often boosted by the character's skills. The enemies are building up power tokens to increase their damage. You can use certain combat cards to take those away. And then at the end of each round, some of them will do nasty things to you unless you've covered up those spots. It's all pretty fun, it's pretty tense, and it gets really cool as you upgrade this deck, because it's almost like a little deck builder. You replace these cards with better and better ones, and you just become stronger and stronger, and it really feels great. Now, compared to the original Sleeping Gods combat, it's very similar in terms of what you're doing to the enemies. They didn't build up power in the old one, but the difference is in the old one, they would always attack you at the end of the turn, and now you can stop that from happening, which I think is fine. It does make the ends of combat feel a little bit easier in this one, but that doesn't necessarily bother me. The combat deck might annoy some people because, like, why am I using a whip one combat and then the next person using it and then somebody else uses it? Like, why are we passing weapons back and forth? But it does make combat more dynamic than in the original, and the big thing was in the original, you'd only have 4 out of 8 characters attack each round, and actually it could only be 3 out of 8 because somebody could attack twice, I think. So you could, like, beef up one person and have them kind of carry the entire team, so I like that in this one you have to always attack with 4 out of 5 people each time. It tends to make things a bit more balanced, and you can't kind of abuse combos for your characters. And then the big thing in the old one is that you could miss. You could miss your attack and waste it and still get counterattacked. It was nasty and felt terrible. Now they do have a die that'll modify how much damage you do on some cards, but you never miss. You just do less or more damage. So for my money, huge improvement there. And one little addendum for the new combat, you actually have these big epic boss battles, which I've only done a few of, but they are pretty exciting. The closest I remember the original Sleeping Gods having to that is a series of skill checks to, like, defeat enemies. I don't know. It definitely wasn't as cool as these from what I can remember. And then we get to the number one thing you're coming to Sleeping Gods for, or at least the number one thing you should be coming for, and that's the exploration and the reading, the adventure, and the quests. They have this great system where you're using keywords to identify like what you've done and what you're looking for, and that'll change how you interact with certain locations. And the writing is great, the choices are great, even going to the same locations, I'm making choices for things that kind of lock out other choices, so the replay seems pretty good. Again, like I said, I would imagine most people will be able to do 3 or 4 campaigns before they've explored the majority of what the game has to offer. And then for our completionist friends, there are a ton of things to unlock and explore, and they give you super powerful unlocks that'll make your next run a lot easier because you'll start with more cool stuff, awesome combat cards and such. So this isn't going to be for everyone. You need to like open world adventure. You need to like the feeling of going off and having side quests and kind of picking what you want to do and then following threads, seeing where they go. But if you do enjoy that kind of thing, this is some of the best there is. And honestly, this is the one part where I think it's pretty much identical to the original. I loved how they did the story and such in Sleeping Gods, and I think it's just as good here. Though one very small improvement that I like a lot for those who are hunting achievements and totems is that in this version, you get totems, but they don't do anything. They're dormant until you use certain rare elements to unlock them. And that's what actually gets you the adventure card. That's what puts them on your totem list for achievements. And this is just a small quality of life upgrade for those who are hunting for totems. In the old Sleeping Gods, you would like go and get totems, and they were so useful, you'd kind of want to go and get them again. In this one, even if you get the dormant totems you've already unlocked, you're usually not going to unlock them. You'll just save the resources to unlock a different totem. So you tend to get less doubling up and repetition of totems from play to play. At least that's what I imagine. I'm still finishing my first campaign. So overall, you might want to check out Distant Skies if you like narrative adventure games, if you like open world adventure where you can kind of make your own path and blaze your own way and explore and discover things. And even if you didn't love the original Sleeping Gods, you still might want to give this one a look because it has streamlined a lot of the more frustrating parts. But on the other hand, you might want to avoid this one if you want a more linear narrative. This does kind of let you go in whatever direction you want. And also if you want a game that is completely streamlined or a game that's a consistently huge challenge, I think this one can get a little bit easy at the end and can still be a little bit onerous to run when you have a ton of cards. And if you want to see the beginning of the game in action, I filmed a playthrough a week ago. You can check that out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.